let's say you're a ghoul, all right? Why should you, a ghoul, care? Well, as it turns out, allowing a virus to rampage through billions of people, even if you can't see them from your high-rise yacht, is bad. Because we're all human. No, this isn't a speech about empathy. I know, you don't have any of that. This is from a biological perspective. The longer a virus has to spread through a population, the more chances it gets to mutate. And the more likely one of those mutations will turn out to make the virus deadlier, or more resistant to vaccines. Let me see if I can put this into terms that the richies can understand. It's like if you gamble on the stock market. The more stocks, aka human bodies, you, the virus, gets to own, the more likely you're going to become stronger, and some of your gambling is going to pay off. This isn't just a fun biological thought exercise. It's literally happening right now. You may have heard of the COVID variants from the UK that are spreading more easily, but there's also a COVID variant found in South Africa, and now in the US, that may be both more transmissible and less responsive to vaccines. South Africa, that sounds familiar. Oh! We talked about it 10 seconds ago, about the South African diplomat who asked pharmaceutical companies to make the vaccine accessible to their country to help them inoculate people, which would probably maybe have stopped this new strain from developing. Don't worry though, I'm sure if this strain starts to wreak havoc on the rest of the world, we'll find a way to blame South Africa in a super racist and xenophobic way. Yay? Sorry, I have this thing where when I reach a certain level of despair, I say, yay. Don't worry, it's just the sound of my brain getting fried by sadness and rage. Yay! So, if we allow the virus to spread and destroy lives in poorer countries, it's going to come back to bite us in the ass, not just morally or karmically, but biologically, as the chances of creating a deadlier, stronger, and more resistant virus becomes way more likely. Which, let me check with my science expert. Dr. Katy Stoll, a doctor, from a medical perspective, is people dying bad?
Well, Cody, if you look at this science chart, here is an alive person, figure A, and here is a dead person, figure B. Now, if you examine the data using a mathematical model to take the square root of the formula of being alive, you will conclude that being dead is in fact bad. BBC QED.
Well, there you have it, folks. Which is weird because it's almost like the rich ruling class would prefer a bunch of people to die over helping them. Almost like they're more afraid of losing some of their total power than they are of human extinction. That may seem like an exaggeration, but let's look at some research.
Oh, Cody, do you need another chart?
No, it's...
Remember, QED.
Yes, right. QED. So, studies back in May of 2020 found that over 36,000 lives in the US could have been saved if lockdown measures had started even just a week earlier. Another analysis shows that if the US had done a serious lockdown early on, like South Korea, Australia, Germany, and Singapore, between 70 and 99% of Americans who died from COVID may have been saved. It's easy enough to draw the conclusion that the lack of lockdowns in the US was a mere calculation of the economy over human lives, but even that doesn't quite make sense. An analysis by the World Bank found that earlier lockdowns not only saved lives, but had less negative impacts on the economy. Countries like South Korea that contained the virus by successfully locking down and paying people to stay home seemed to get less wrecked, economically speaking. South Korea's GDP shrank by only 1.1% compared to the US's 9%. So countries who locked down early and got people to stay home are doing better both in the whole keeping people alive thing and economically. This just in, ear thing, killing a bunch of people and having the constant threat of a deadly unabated virus may actually not be so great for the economy. So in the US, either we have a bunch of foolish billionaires, a distinct possibility, or there's something that billionaires fear more than a pandemic. After all, so far the pandemic hasn't hurt them too bad. In fact, many billionaires are doing quite well. Jeff Bezos has added a cool $35 billion to his wealth. Mark Zuckerberg with a measly $25 billion. And like I said earlier, Bill Gates, philanthropist, got $10 billion. So the pandemic's not really hurting the wealthiest in their pockets. But you'd think the prospect of breeding an unstoppable super virus by letting it munch away at the pores would be scary. But there's something even scarier. The pores! Specifically, the pores realizing they can and should demand more from their governments. After all, if the government can pay people a living wage to stay home, what's next? Paying people health care? Free education? Food security? Where does it end? Asks ghouls like GOP Senator Lindsey Graham, who took a stand against $600 unemployment checks back in April 2020. Quote, "I promise you, over our dead bodies will this get reauthorized," he said. Dead bodies, huh? Cool choice of words during a deadly pandemic. Real, obvious, dramatic irony. Very, very Sorkin-esque, Lindsay. But then he gives the game away. Graham said, quote, "It was never our goal to pay people more to be out of work than at work. If a person is making $23 an hour on unemployment, it's going to be hard to get you to go back to work for $17 an hour job." That right there, that's what they're afraid of. People suddenly feeling what it's like to be valued. Suddenly being given a scrap of dignity and realizing that maybe they should demand that little piece of dignity when companies beg them to come back to work. Hey, thanks for watching that clip. Here's the evergreen end plate to ask you to like and subscribe. It's any day of the year where you are.